I'm going to go ahead and explain about myself. Valerie explained that I began using SignWriting in 2004 when, well, what happened was before then, I was getting very frustrated because I was writing in English and not my own native language. So I tried to invent a way to write sign. Oh man, that was so long ago, 1980s or something. I was just beginning and learning. Then, not exactly, but close enough for me. I could read and understand sign from there. I had to switch it into English. So then, around 2003, at that time, my sister was dating a man from Mexico, and he was deaf. And ASL was not the most fluent, but he knew Mexican Sign Language, LS. Anyway, I knew a little bit of that. So I decided that I was going to be looking for LSM, a dictionary, so I could learn a little bit more about Mexican Sign Language. So happened that I found SignWriting. And I thought, oh, I found SignPuddle, the computer program for the Mexican Sign Language. So I started to think, what is that? It is very interesting, and it's almost like my writing system that I had invented myself. So I'm looking back and forth, and I'm reading more and more on the internet and learning, and then I had more in-depth and different symbols. It was closer to my own writing, and well, my writing was limited. You know, it hadn't really taken off. So I had decided, well, fine, I'm going to go ahead and learn this. And that was October of 2003. And I was, like Claudia, talking about who had joined the writing list. I didn't even understand what that was. And I didn't understand how to write that. And I would have to be explained what the list was. Oh, okay, well, it's people that the symbols, discuss what the symbols mean and how you write different signs. And I thought, so I learned about that. And then I thought, well, maybe in 2004, around there in summertime, or a little before, I thought I started to asking people questions and answering and talking to Valerie. And then I began working with Valerie. And that was in 2004, for sure. And my very first project was writing the meaning of signs in a dictionary. And a sign, and I would type and explain what that meant. And I thought, well, my first sign was like blue, and I wrote what one color that looks like sky, something like that. And so it was just a very simple dictionary. That was, well, anyway, that was my first experience. And so now, 10 years later, oh my goodness, I had become really involved with sign writing and many, many, many different projects I've been involved in. And I know there's a few people that ask me, well, how come, what about the facial expression and the pictures and everything? And I said, well, yes, that's all involved in the projects. That's included. So that's my history in a nutshell. So, wait a minute. See, the first style. Oh, sorry. First slide is about my first slide.
I put it up.
Can you see it?
Can you see it?
Mm.
Okay. So, I put it up.
Can't hear.
Okay, but Nancy, you can hear me, right? I did put it up. Now I'm going to go back to it. There it is.
It's confusing me. Never mind. I remember.
We're now looking at Adam now.
All right. So, anyway, I'm going to explain about how the writing hands for sign writing, how it first, let me first explain a little bit of the history. First slide, please.
Okay.
So, when this began, the handwriting, next slide. So this one shows American deaf adult, his handwriting. That was back in 1983. And I didn't even know they had anything. Well, I knew that they had some before 1984, 74. But this was the first one that I had found on the website. And the next one, please. Okay. This writing is by a deaf child, 8 years or 9 years old. And she learned sign writing 45 minutes before this. And this one, and this in San Diego Elementary School, before 1984. And I don't know exactly who the teacher was. I know who it was. I work with her, yes. I see her name, Erin. Anyway, so that was at Lafayette Elementary School. Okay, next one. All right. This one shows two different types of writing by hand. And you have the left side shows like full handwriting, and the right side is the same sign for another way of writing called shorthand. That was done in 1982, many years ago, 30-something years ago, 32 years ago, sorry. And I know that person was me. I know that because that's how old I am. Sorry, 32. Oh yeah. So, next one. All right. This one. This is another example of shorthand. This is for a song, Silent Night. And this one was actually written by Valerie. Sutton back in 1982. And it's kind of funny because I began researching shorthand, and I could actually read that. And the song Silent Night, written by Valerie Sutton. Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright. So that's an example. You know, I don't have to go into too much detail, but okay. Next slide, please. So that was before computers. And so, well, handwriting wasn't really used then anymore, right? Question. Next slide. So, this example is more recent. So there's been computers now, but in Germany, German schools, there is a student who is writing with the handwriting. And this drawing is a mural. And that it shows how this can be written on a sign writing written in a mural. Can you see? Next slide. Yes? Okay, this one, that one is exactly the same when it's finished. And that was just in 2008. So really, I think it's beautiful, but it is handwriting. So go ahead, next slide. Okay, this is the same student. And there's a blackboard, and there's written mouth movements, and from Saudi Arabia. Stefan, his class. Then this is recently, you just saw it in one of the students. Next one. All right, this one, I'm going to have to add something. It's funny. This sign writing was written in the bathroom. Valerie and I have been laughing about this, and it says, if you have sign writing in the bathroom, then that's the seal of approval. Okay, next slide, please. So I've been showing you examples of all of Germany's. Now I have another, some pictures from Saudi Arabia. Sorry, I confused them. In their classroom, they have written all over on the blackboard and also in on pages. Next slide. Okay, this one is from my phone. Look, I have an app that I can write with my finger, and there's a picture here that I wanted to, I just wrote it. And that, I know, looks different from what you see because this is my own handwriting system. I'm going to explain about that. Okay, next slide.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, right now. Oh, there we go.
Okay. Okay, my own research of handwriting all together. I noticed that there's four different kinds of writing by hand. First, I call it block printing. And looks like if a computer wrote it. Okay, so like you're typing it, printing. Second one is called handwriting. And this one's a little bit more simplified compared to the block printing. You know why? Because you need, with the block printing, you need to shade in. The handwriting, no, just a few strokes, and that would mean the same instead of shading it all in. All right, then there's also this one. I don't have an exact word for it. This one I have called cursive because it's more quick to write. It's definitely more simple than the handwriting. And understand, too, that this cursive is, well, it's most of the time, it takes a more skilled writer to do it. Because you have to have more experience with the other two first. And then the last one is the actual shorthand. And that one, shorthand, I have not been in depth and involved with. One reason why is because that system of writing has developed mostly before computers were around. And that one you need to look at the signer and write fast as they're signing. So now that's one of the reasons why the shorthand system long ago, the expressive speed of signing. Fast. I'm not going to explain a whole lot about that, okay? But this first one, the block printing, I'm not going to explain a lot about that either because it looks like the computer print. But I have one example. Next slide.
Okay. We're waiting for the slide. We're waiting for the slide. Steve, are you there? There we go. Good.
Okay, this one, oh, wait a minute. Okay, this picture, well, block printing, that's what it looks like. And you're saying hello. It says, hi, signer, sign writer. Oh, look up there on the side, Nan. I just took a picture of the board that you can't see. All right. So now this is the most common that you see because most people see the sign writing and then they can just copy it. So it looks the same. So now, yes, it does take some time to write it, and you have to fill in the squares and all of that with the dark shading. And that's why most of the time people tell me, SignWriting, you can't write everything. And so I'm thinking, well, yes, you can, but it takes a little bit longer, yes. So that's why we have a more simplified version next. Next slide. Waiting.
It's up.
Okay. Okay, you see this example? There's someone writing, student writing a few different signs. Hello, hi, happy, to know. But that one looks different compared to the block printing. So, one reason the student has to learn block printing first is why it's a foundation for the other writing. Yes, so when you are finished, you're going to be skilled at block printing. Then you'll know the foundations, and then you can start on the handwriting. And it has a few simplified parts to it. You know, like what you see, the high, you don't have to fill it in. All you do is write a diagonal line. So I have noticed different sign writers that have different variations. Well, most of the time they're about the same, but a little bit differences. You know, same as if in English when you write, there's differences, of course, right? So, okay, next slide. Okay, this one is from my phone. This is my simplified handwriting that I call cursive. And this one uses some variations of the other sign writing. Like most of it's my own, though. Some is from the writing system that I used way, way long ago, back in 1996. That's that I made my own up. So that's how some of these appeared. So one of them I noticed that's especially different from before is that this I am only writing the dominant hand. If I have both hands, I will use a time signal for both hands at the same time, or alternating back and forth, or opposite, or get what I mean? I have, there's different things, different symbols for that. So this example, this picture, is saying, now I'm going to fly where? To London. I am happy. I can see Ryan. Ryan is my friend there in London. Okay, next slide. This example is the shorthand. And this, is, to my understanding, was back in the 80s. most of the time when I saw documents that use this, at that time, way back then, SignWriting was mostly focused on just copying things down as they went, transcription. And this condensed or shorthand is very focused on language specific, and meaning that it's specifically ASL or specifically for another language. So, till now, the shorthand for when you're looking at something and you write it down, and then later you will translate it more fully, or write it on the computer. But this is more for private use. Notes. Sorry. That's why it's not for general all over use. But next slide. So I will explain how the handwriting works. Okay, next slide. Okay, first, the thing you have to remember is that there are 8 basic root signs, symbols, shapes. Choose one. Sorry. So, for this shape, for a square, it's about the same. You're the same thing. For an E, you have the square, but you also have a line, and understand it's going to look a little different from the print. You know, the E is inside the square. For the handwriting, if you're going to write the E, that line has to go through the square root shape. Get it? And then the other symbols are the same going on down. Then the bottom of the hand shape you don't have to have, you just skip writing that one for the palm hand shape. And then a B hand shape, same. You have to make sure it goes through that root shape line. All right, next slide. All right. Okay, you have your hands, the palms. And for a palm that's facing sideways, facing away from you, okay, that, before you had to fill in the whole thing. For handwriting, you just draw a diagonal line. So that's one, very simple thing. And then when the hand is facing sideways, that part where you would shade it in is just shaded in with one line, diagonal. Make sure that that's clear, a diagonal, not to the side, because then it's going to change the meaning. All right, next slide. Now, if you have, for an S, all right, you're going to have same square for an S. And if you have an S on the top view, how are you going to fill that in? Well, what do? You're not going to be filling it in. What you do is write one line across. You got to make sure it goes all the way across the symbol. So that means your hand is like this. You're looking down at the top, an S with the palm facing up. There is a square, but there's also a complete line through it. Okay, next slide. Now, okay, when you have an E, that has a line too, but it means it's a little bit of a problem for writing E's that are on the top view because there's already a line there. So what do? You just don't write the top. So that means you're going to see an E top view, and it's going to just be the bottom half without the top. Makes sense? Next slide. Now, for movements, finger movements. All right. Oh, there's a little bit for the 5. For closed, if you're going to open and close your hands, okay, that before you would have to write everything in and fill it in, but now it's the same idea as before with the palm. You just write a little diagonal through that little round circle instead of filling it in, and that means the hand opens and closes. All right, next slide. Okay, arrows. Okay, an arrow, you know, like for tree, the right hand is dark, the arrow, the left hand, the arrow is white, and if they're together, both, you have 2 arrows. I'm sorry. 2 together, same time, a single arrow with a single arrowhead. So how are you going to write this? Well, for me, for the right hand, I wasn't so sure what to do, so I just wrote the arrow through the arrowhead. Okay, so the line goes through, the stem goes through the arrowhead. So it makes it look like it's filled in like before. But it's the same idea. Okay? You have to make sure that the stem goes through the arrowhead. If not, it's just going to mean it's your left hand moving. See? There's other ones that are exactly the same, like that too. Printing, like printing. All right, next slide. So, okay, read. So, double arrows. Okay, there's one way that you could write exactly the same as before. Just make sure that the arrows are, the stem is going through the arrowhead. Another way that you can do, another variation that I've seen, is that you have 2 stems, arrowheads, stacked on top of the other. So you have there's some pros and cons to this. One is you have it going back and forth, movement going back and forth. You don't know which way it started first, left or right or left. But I've noticed that most people really don't care. which way it started. So it's really up to you how you want to write it. So next slide. This arrow is for the floor plane. Yeah, right, floor. Yeah, so this one, you'll notice that the print, some of the stems are thicker than the others. So what are you going to do to write that quickly? Well, I just draw the outline. Okay, so if I'm going to go this way up and over, I begin with the stem. It's thicker, and then the arrow outline, I just outline it and then finish it with the arrowhead. Okay, next slide. Okay, last, punctuation. Okay, remember before we have, if there's a black line, you draw a diagonal line through it. Well, for punctuation, well, you only draw the lines. Okay, you don't, you just have 2 lines for like suspend, a pause. So if you're going to cut off the sentence, you're going to know that that's over. Instead of filling it all in, what you do is you have 2 lines and a diagonal line in the middle, right inside between the 2 lines. So that way, if it's a thick line, you just draw 2 skinny lines and a diagonal line through it. And if it's a thin line, it's just one, like 1 line for each. Okay, now remember with the handwriting, we have, the basic root shape, and then almost the same, except with the square is not really a square. Now it's kind of a loop. So you have to learn a little bit easier way for your handwriting, because writing an exact square, this is a lot easier. Understand, you have to be careful though, because you need to make sure that you are not looking like the palm of the hand, the flat hand, So, hold on. So then, that's only true, but, well now, this hand shape, the closed O or flat O or something, that's not written like a rectangle before. It's the same with the square. It's got a kind of a loop there. But understand, you have to make sure that it's smaller, thinner, not bigger, square. Then for the flat hand, you don't have to draw that whole angled top of the hand. You only just draw a loop. Like Valerie said, a mitten. Well, that's what Valerie said. She called it a mitten. Cute. I don't know. I think it's a cute name, but I don't know. So, next slide. Okay, I'm going to allow you to read here. All right. Now remember, before we had a diagonal line for shading. And for the side view of the hand, I do not add that diagonal. I know you could be confused as to which hand is which and which way it's facing, but because you don't know which part is dark. But I've noticed that most of the time for me, myself, it's really the hand doesn't do that. You don't have a tendency to do that with your hand. Not most of the time. But also, I'm not writing both hands anyway. So that makes it a little bit easier. So, next slide. Now, again, remember, with the top view of the hand, you have to have a line drawn completely through. That's for my cursive writing also. It's not any different from handwriting, really. So, okay, next slide. Okay, again, for the E that's flat or the top shape, you don't write the top of it, okay? You write that little loop with the line through it. And that is the same as with handwriting. Next slide. All right, contact stars. This one, I became a little sloppy with my writing, but it happened that this symbol, it was a lot easier to write this way, and rather than drawing 3 times exactly the way you do with that, but a curved line, straight line, and then a curved line. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is the same as for finger movement. Same as before, same writing. Okay, you have the open and closed, you have the circle with the diagonal line through it, or to open, it's the same thing. Next slide. Okay, this one, the arrowheads. I let you read it. Okay. The arrowhead, how is one with the diagonal line, how are you going to write that? That's for the right hand. And then for the left hand, you're going to have a line through it. That would be an example like most of the time when you're writing only the right hand, that symbol is only going to show up. But if it's going to be on the left hand, that's when I'm going to use that symbol. Okay, then remember, when you're writing the hands, if you have writing with the arrow, generic arrow, that will tell you that both hands are moving at the same time. Okay, next slide. All right. This is the second double head movement. Okay, this, when I have written a diagonal line for the arrowhead, this, if I have two of those lines, that means it happens twice exactly the same way. If I have just one of those little arrows on either end of the stem, then that means it's going back and forth. And remember before there was a problem if it's going which way, right to left, left to right. Well, when you have an arrow with straight and then just one diagonal, you know that it goes that direction first. Because if I have the arrow going diagonal, straight, diagonal, that's because that top of it means that goes first. So that's how I know which way. And then if it's going down and up, or forward back, doesn't matter. If the diagonal goes diagonal, straight, diagonal, the bottom is going to be the first one that moves. And then the top one is a second because of the movement down, up. If it goes up, down, diagonal, there is where the first movement goes. So it's on that side of the symbol. Okay, next slide. Okay, let you read it. Now, remember before we had some symbols that have thick parts to it, and this shows you which is closer, which part of the arrow is closer to you. For my handwriting, cursive, I don't add that information. So I only have just the simplest line. So if the movement is going up and over, you draw the diagonal and then the loop. How do I know which is closer to me and which one's further? If it's on the right-hand side, or that side, the arrow, that means it's closer to me. If it's more in the center, that means it's further away. Also, if it's at the bottom, if it's goes a loop and up, the arrow goes up, the bottom means it's closer to me. So that's how you know. And if I write a loop and then the diagonal, you'll know where the movement is going that direction, circular towards me. Okay, that I know is a lot of assumption. And that's why sometimes maybe it can be confusing for people to read my handwriting. I don't know. So next slide. Okay, so for the head, I only write the dominant side. So that means expressions, eyebrows, eyes. There's only one symbol for that. But But for the mouth, well, there's only one. So you really can't cut it in half. Same for the nose too, by the way. I think I have forgotten to let people read this. So take a look at the next slide. The next slide, please. All right, this is the same as before for the writing, the handwriting. One line is for parentheses, and 2 lines is for a pause. And if I have 2 lines with a diagonal in the middle, that means an end of the sentence, like a period. So then we have, if I have a thin line, that's just one. If there's a thick line, that has 2 lines with a diagonal through it. That's it. And that is it for my cursive handwriting. I don't think I have another slide. Oh, wait, yes. Hold on, next slide. So I've told you before, there's only writing with the dominant side. So I have a few examples of print and my cursive handwriting. And you could see all the 2-hand signing. And then, for example, teacher, you can see 1 hand and that loop underneath. What is that? That is a time indicator symbol. So that means that both hands are moving at the same time. Okay, same time. So that's why I know teacher with 1 hand really means teacher with 2 hands. So if I wanted to write just 1 hand, without that, it means the same. Teacher with 1 hand. You don't really have to have that time indicator. But if I have written it there, then for sure it means both hands. And then the next sign is different. That one, because the movement is opposite, you have 2 of those lines, curves, meaning both are moving, but in the opposite direction. So that's how I know, like different. I noticed that 1 hand is here, okay, and it means that there's really 2, but I didn't put it down the other hand. I didn't put that square, and because it's the same hand shape on the other side. So it's same for multiply. Okay, if you notice that I have the 2 hands, I have actually the root. I don't have the root for this one. So the last one is talking, chatting, and you notice that 1 hand moves and then the other one moves, and that's why I have the 2 curves sort of connected, which means they're alternating. It's not happening at the same time, but it is the same movement. So that's how I know that when I'm doing this with 1 hand, with those 2 lines, the time indicators really means it's alternating movements with the same hand shapes. Okay, next slide. So I've been talking about having some, I don't write complete shapes for some signs, you know, like, for example, different or multiply, or, I only write one line, really. How do I know? People would say, how do I know this? And then what you do, the non-dominant hand, the bass hand, that is going to just have a very simple symbol for the root hand, just a little tiny line. If it's like an E, it's going to be a line with another line through it, not like this, not across, but, and then an O, well, oh, easy enough. Anyway, C, just a C. You don't have to write the entire hand shape, just a simple C will do. And then the flat open hand, or the flat O, and then the palm is just one line. This one line, is a little bit different from the B hand shape, or just a flat hand, or an S. A B hand shape, you have a line with a little line through it showing the thumb. And now I think I have one more slide. Can you see the next slide? Yes, yes. Okay, I have a few examples here with that. So I'll let you read it. Okay, so now we have an example for in, join. Okay, this I didn't have fully explained. This hand shape is really a C. We don't know which way it's going or located. But because I know that sign going join, I don't have to write the whole thing. I know I don't have to write it all. I know that it's in that location, palm facing. So, like the sign for name, this non-dominant hand, I just write the fingers. I don't write the whole hand shape. That's how I know it's name, the sign for name. It's not moving. And then the last symbol, I'm writing. Okay, the non-dominant hand is just a line. Truly, of course, it could be confused with writing down the back of the hand. However, if that information is important, of course I'm going to write it completely. But for me, I know, I just write that line.
Nancy, do you have any questions?
My question is, did Adam's handwriting cursive begin before or after you learned SignWriting? When?
The cursive handwriting that I had, that you see, is actually mostly started after I had learned SignWriting itself. There were some components of it that were from my ad hoc writing system way back before I even saw SignWriting. And then there were some parts of it that were involved that I added into it because I saw other signwriters' handwriting, and I saw something that made it a little bit better. Then there were some things that just I added because like with the touch contact star.
Mm-hmm.
That one came up because I was writing so fast that I forgot to one time pick up the pencil for the X part of it, and so it became a loop and then a vertical line.
Mm-hmm.
So some of it came up afterwards, some of it came from it before, some parts of that I showed you came up from other people. So what you saw now is a mixture.
So do you have like pages that we could read?
A lot of the stuff I did with handwriting, actually not just on my phone, but a lot of it I would do on like a whiteboard. And so after a while, I would start erasing it and write something new, erase it, write something new. So I don't really have like a documentation of how it evolved and all that, fortunately. But there are some people who could see on my presentation page that Valerie had put up a photo of something that I did within Valerie's own home, where she has a whiteboard, where I did some stuff, and she just said, leave it, leave it, leave it. So she took a picture of it. In fact, we actually have it over here. I'll show you a little bit. And then we have another board that's over here, which is another picture that I had taken that you saw in the presentation. So I don't know how well you could see it, but it was in the PowerPoint presentation, and so you could see those two different pictures, and those were some of the boards that I used for handwriting. I even had some of my own.
Can you look on the screen?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Steve. It's good. That's the board we just looked at through the computer. Very nice, Adam. And so what's happened is you have, oh, sorry. Can you hear me? You can hear me. Okay, good. So what happened is that you have been working many, many years with SignWriting, and you just sort of started to do handwriting, and it just sort of evolved. Is that right?
Yes.
So do you think that handwriting can be taught?
Taught where?
What I mean is, it feels like you learned SignWriting itself, and then you just applied writing by hand because you needed to. You weren't really going to school and sitting down and being taught how to do cursive writing. You just sort of did it. It was just a part of your daily life, and so you didn't have to think that much about it. It just sort of happened. Isn't that true? It was experience, in other words, not classroom.
Yeah, mostly it was just my own experience through things and just seeing different things. And there were some things that I would try, and then I'd go, that doesn't really work. And I'd throw that out. And then there were other people I would see their writing, and I'd go, oh, I like that. In fact, the square, where it has the rounded bottom, that one, I believe, comes from Andre from Canada, who's a deaf blind man, I think it was. He was the one who said, well, when I write by hand, this is what I do. And I saw that, and I was like, that is so much easier to have it rounded. And at least you can still see it's different from a circle, but it doesn't take as long as trying to write it as a square. So there was a lot of that stuff where I just kind of picked it up from other places and just kind of learned it, and or just trial and error.
Adam is right that he's just sort of evolved with it. It's obvious, and it's really nice. I think you mean Andre, is it Thibault? Thibault, who's deafblind from Canada? Yes, I can imagine that he has a way to write by hand also, because he has been writing sign writing for years. So years ago, people used to say, Valerie, why don't you just teach me the shorthand? Or, I don't want to even bother learning to read and write the full writing system. I just want the shorthand right now. And I pointed out to them that even doing a shorthand or handwriting for English or any other language we know takes a little time to learn the actual language itself and learn how to read and write the basics of that language first before you can shorten it. How can you shorten something until you know what you're shortening? So you can't just jump into learning handwriting before you've learned the full writing system. At least that was my feeling about it. And I just wondered what your feeling is about that, Adam.
Yeah, I always tell people the same thing, because there are sometimes people will see my handwriting and they'll say, why are you teaching the printed form when you could be teaching this? It's a lot simpler to write. I tell them, yes, it is a lot simpler to write, but if you don't know the foundation of what the symbols mean, it's hard to try to figure out how to read the shorthand, the handwritten form of it, because it's even a lot more simplified. And so then I always tell people, well, it's just like when you first learn to write English or whatever other written language you learned. You always learn the block printing, and it's always really huge, and maybe you'll have 4 lines per page, and you're going up, down, pick up, over, that A, okay. And so I always tell people that's the first thing you have to learn, is how to write the full symbols themselves. Then after that, you can learn, oh, just do an A. And my way of writing a capitalized A is probably different from other people. I know some people have it where they have a loop, and then they do the line across for the A. There are some people I know that just have kind of like a circle, and that's their A. And that's just because that's how people have learned it, but also they felt that's the more easy way of writing it.